Hey, you beautiful beings. Welcome back to Empowered Human with Nina Garcia. I am your host, Nina Garcia. If you are new, welcome. You are in for a special treat because we have a special guest here today with us. And if you are an oldie but a goodie, welcome back, folks. I am immediately going to tell you all, if you are not sure what this podcast is about, we are growth oriented on this podcast. I want you to level up, right? An empowered human life means you are being very intentional about courageously showing up as yourself, owning your truth without invalidating yourself and also without invalidating others. How do we do that? Right now, it might be a mystery to you, but by the end of this episode, it will not be, folks. So grab a journal or a really good friend to dialogue with about what comes up for you in this episode. But before I say what I usually say there, I'm going to welcome our very special guest. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Nina.
How you doing this early morning?
I'm doing good. Doing great, actually. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. I like your energy this morning. Yeah, I am good. I took my very special head wrap off right before this, so my curls should hopefully be extra crisp for the video. And otherwise, it is cold outside, which makes me probably have even more energy than I already have. So I'm loving it.
Mm, Nice. Very nice. Yeah. I need some of that energy too, actually. So throw it this way. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, I want the audience to know a little bit about you, right? They are a little bit familiar with me, but can we introduce you with, when we think about empowering humanity, there are as many ways to express your humanity as there are human beings, right? And so I really want to invite you to just share what identities, what roles might be present for you that might resonate with our audience being human as they are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, take it from the top, right? I'm a husband and a father of three, right? So I can completely, connect and understand what it's like to be a parent, what it's like to, have to try to work on and build your marriage, which is difficult, right? And maintain a marriage, maintain a household. Of course, right? I also have to work, right, to provide for my family. So I'm also a head of sales for a software company. And I army in my part time, so I'm also a platoon leader in the Texas Army National Guard, right? So there's no shortage of things that vie for my attention and that pull me into many different directions. So I think really, just understanding, we had a conversation before when you talked a little about perfectionism, and I think it's understanding that while we strive for perfection, it's something that is ultimately truly unachievable, right? It's okay to strive for it, but we've also got to realize we're human, right? We're going to fall, we're going to make mistakes along the way, and we learn, right? We win and we learn.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I love what you just brought in here because the reality, right, is that even if we have this idea of perfection, that the reality of perfection is that it can't really exist, right? So we strive for an idea, right? And then we land among what we can actually achieve as human beings, being, right? We're going to err, we're going to make mistakes. And then how do we learn from them? How do we level up? How do we grow into that next space?
hmm Yeah, absolutely, right? Like I think it's completely about that, right? So like it's elusive, but that's what's also what makes it really fun in a lot of ways, right? When we stop striving for that, then I think things get a little boring, right? Or maybe you've reached, if you feel like you're in an area of life, I think where you're stopping striving for that, then it might be time to look into some other areas or question why have you stopped striving for perfection in that area, right? Does it not motivate you the way it used to, and what about it is bringing you to that place? So yeah, definitely, stay into your passions, right? As hard as it can be in this world.
Mm-hmm.
But stick to your passions, right? I think you tend to naturally be motivated to get up every morning.
When you stick to the passions, right? So thank you for bringing this up. Y'all, we typically do start with a question, right? And Chris is already leaning into what our question is for this episode. So for those of you who want to know, like, what's going to happen, we're still going to go through the question, okay? Main question of this episode is this. I'm going to ask Chris here, what does it mean to you to lean into your edge and level up in your emotional arena? Okay. That's going to be the question that we're going to be exploring. And I think it's important for us to really understand when we think about this from an emotional space. Here's already golden nugget. Get your journals out, folks, right? I want you to imagine that every human being is filled with this emotional landscape within them, an entire landscape, and you cannot see the end of it, There are many places, if you were to have a map of this landscape, that you are completely unfamiliar with. It is unknown territory, and some of which you might be very familiar with. You might know where your deep, dark spaces are. You might know where home is. You might know where the forests are that are kind of scary, but you're ready to maneuver through them, right? There's all different spaces on your emotional landscape. And we're going to be using that metaphor today. But one of the things that Chris already mentioned is this reality that if you're not fueled and motivated to move into your next space, to figure out what that is. And I said, can we pivot? Can we look at it in a new way? Can we figure out what is the passion, right? So without getting too much into it, the question again, keep listening in. If you were like, how do I lean into my edge and level up in my emotional arena? We're going to be exploring that with Chris. Our last episode gave an answer in the nutshell, and I said, literally, I want you to lean into your own cliff edge. That was our answer in a nutshell. Now, Chris may have a different answer today. We may discover some new things today, which I certainly hope we do. But if you are ready, audience, to lean into your edge and level up in your emotional arena, I am inviting you to do that right here, right now, with Chris Garcia, husband, father of three, head of sales of a software company, and platoon leader. Also, full disclosure, my brother. We got family on the air here today, folks. So thank you for being here, Chris. I'm super excited to lean into our edge. Grab your journal, folks, because of course, at this point, I am so curious. You ready to play?
So, well, let's jump in, yeah.
Yes, that's usually where we pause it. So I was like, just take a, okay.
Okay, cool.
And let's take a breath. Shake it off, everybody out there. And let's jump in. Okay, Chris, so here's the thing. When we talk about leaning into our edge, okay, I'm going to give you the image that we had last week just so that you've got some context. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I give this metaphor in this, right, of like your emotional landscape. Imagine it's like a landscape, literally, right, like a physical landscape. And here's the thing is when we're comfortable, I want us to imagine that we have, home and camp set up on a solid ground, right? We have shelter around us. Things feel like we're in the green zone. We're good, right? But when something pops up in our world that suggests that we might not be so comfortable, we might not be so safe, there might be something here that needs to change, or there might be something here that is dangerous or scary, right? Any discomfort that starts to pop up, we will feel that. And it starts to feel internally like we are walking toward the edge of a cliff. And the closer that we get to that discomfort, something new, something scary, our brain literally starts to turn up the anxiety and it says, wow, I don't know if we should be doing this. Hey, this is scary. Hey, this is uncomfortable. Hey, you either got to shut this down if the closer you get to the edge, right? And it gets louder usually. And the closer you get to the edge of this cliff, your brain is telling you, stop, don't do this. Go back to where it's comfortable. Go back to your comfort zone because this is new territory. And I think if you go too far, you will fall over the edge of this cliff into oblivion. And so what a lot of people will do is they will go back into their comfort zone and they will still feel uncomfortable because life is a knocking at their door and there's an opportunity to grow here. There's an opportunity to change and to level up, but it's so uncomfortable that they will dial back and they will make it back to their comfort zone. And they will come into my office and say, I don't understand why I'm not happy, why I'm sad, why I don't feel motivated, why I can't move forward, Nina. I don't understand. And it is very often, though not always, because they are holding themselves within their comfort zone when they really need to lean into that edge and realize that if they were to just walk up to the edge of that cliff courageously, even though it's uncomfortable, walk up to the edge of that cliff and move through that discomfort, that they would step off the edge of that cliff and down onto the next plateau, actually, the next comfort zone of the upcoming mountain, their next level of growth, their next area to level up and grow into. Is this making sense, metaphorically speaking, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is an image that I use, but I want to put it in your direction now, right? Because of course the question is, how would you lean into your edge and level up in your emotional arena? But this is something we use. If you got to lean over, you got to go in. Your brain is telling you step back, right? But we really have to be able to discern: is this dangerous or is this just really scary and uncomfortable? Two very different things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so a couple things, right? One, we live in a society where obviously, especially in this country, right? And I've traveled the world literally, um, we are so accustomed to comfort, right? Physical comfort, emotional comfort, mental
Mhm.
comfort,
Mhm.
right? All the comforts that we get accustomed to that actually, in a sense, start to handicap us, right? They start to make us more risk averse, more averse to anything that would feel slightly uncomfortable, right? Oh, it's really hot. I'm just going to turn my AC down, right? Can't do that everywhere.
Mhm.
And so, anyhow, all of this sort of comes together to make us just again like super discomfort averse people.
Yeah.
And so there's a saying actually that comes, it's just army saying that I love though, right? And that I want to share with people because I think if more people had this in their brain,
Mhm.
they would progress through these uncomfortable places. And that's embrace the suck, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
have
tell us
to
about Embrace the
embrace,
Suck.
yeah, you have to embrace the suck. Um, it is not fun. And for anybody, this is a great time of the year, right? It's January 20th. So I'm sure a lot of folks are hitting the gym right now and they're learning firsthand what it means to embrace the suck, right? When you haven't worked out in months,
Mhm.
and for some people years, and you
Mhm.
get back into the gym for the first time, it sucks, right? You exercise the next day, everything hurts, right? The day after that, for some reason, is even worse. Like, how did the lactic acid get even worse in your body and make you
Mhm.
feel worse? You
Mhm.
know, so the point is, it sucks, but you have to embrace that. You have to realize it's an inevitable. I'm going to experience it. So I'm just going to push through it, right? I'm
Yeah.
not going to try to
Mhm.
reject it though. This is key. If mentally you try to do everything you can to keep it at arm's length, well then you probably won't even get in your car that day and go to the gym, right? No, that suck hurt too much. That hurt too much. I don't
Comfortable.
want to go back to that.
Yeah.
It's the same thing right now. I would even say transfer that over. It's the same thing emotionally,
Ding ding
right?
ding.
You have to embrace the emotional suck sometimes. Working, look, I'm happy to, say our marriage is not perfect, and
You have a
it can,
human marriage? What?
yeah, right. Go figure. Incredible, huh?
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where we both have to kind of embrace the parts that suck, right? Where, hey, who's going to get the kid at 2 in the morning, right? It's
Mhm.
not fun for either of us, right? But one of us has to get up and do that. And it's part of that, right? And, who's going to clean those dishes and who's right? Like, but really choosing to embrace the parts that aren't as fun, let's say, so
Yeah.
that we can grow together. That's the key thing. And it's funny when you talk about this idea of a landscape,
Yeah.
you know, I think about it like for again, I'm going to use another army reference here, but
Okay.
there's something called land navigation, right? Land nav.
Okay.
So you're looking for points, right? So you've got a compass, you're out in a forest usually, and we're trying to find points. Okay. So I want
Okay.
everybody to come with me. And you've got to find those points
Mhm.
so that you can move on to whatever your next task is. Okay.
Okay.
Um, but let me tell you, sometimes that landscape sucks,
Okay. It's
like really
treacherous.
sucks.
Yeah,
Like
treacherous.
thorns in your legs
Mhm.
sucks,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, you know, rivers, you name it, right? Things you've got to trek through. And
Incredibly
so,
difficult, but
again,
you
here the
keep
point
going.
being,
Mhm.
you have to
Mhm.
embrace the suck, or you will never find your points in life.
Mm, mm. And I think I'm going to dial back to some of these things you shared. Thank you so much for sharing, right, Chris? These images, and in particular for being so honest about the reality of human marriage, right? And I want to say that especially because when we think about relationships, a marriage is a relationship between you and another individual, right? But there's also the relationship between you and yourself that is constantly happening. And this emotional landscape actually holds your relationship with yourself and everyone else, right? So the landscape can be treacherous. It can feel thorny. It can feel like you are drowning in the river sometimes as you try to get to the other side and struggle, but you got to keep going because if you don't keep going and you already feel like you're drowning, right? Like what else is there to do, right? You have to keep going. And while we won't go too much, audience, into surviving versus thriving, I do think it's important that we recognize there is a difference, right? So, how do we move from surviving to thriving? How do we move from, I don't want it to suck all the time though, right? I don't want it to suck all the time. So when we say embrace the suck, and I hear that, I think the reality of embrace it, and also the reality of how temporary it is, that
Yeah.
it's not right. And I think it's important that you mentioned this at the beginning, to the privileges that we have, and how really we do have the privilege to be comfortable in so many more spaces than I think we acknowledge. But it is temporary until you make it to the, now I can breathe again. Now there's relief, right? The baby's not getting up every day at 2 a.m. forever. That's a temporary thing. Thank goodness, right? But we embrace this discomfort, right? Which is my language, right? You just embrace the suck, right? Embrace this discomfort so that we can level up. You become more emotionally resilient. Earlier, you made a mention, and it made me think of the gym, right? You literally talked about the gym for a minute, right? And can I lean into that too? I know we've got the emotional landscape, but can we talk about like the gym?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So when people start to do this emotional arena work, it's super uncomfortable. The idea of it is like, why would I want to feel uncomfortable? That makes no sense to me, right? I want to feel comfortable, right? I want to feel good about my life. Let's just cut there, right? And I'm always like, love it, love where you're going. We cannot jump from A to B. It's more like 1 to 5, which means you have to hit 2 and 3 and 4. You have to hit those points. You cannot just like, Wingardium Leviosa or whatever the Harry Potter reference is to like get from one space to the next, right? It ain't magic. It's work, right? And so whether it's your relationship with yourself, your relationship with a partner, your relationship with the military, your relationship with your job, your relationship with your boss, all of the relationships, it actually comes back to the same foundational emotional skill set. And so for the gym reference audience, right? If you're my gym folk out there, and I know me and my brother are, we like to stay fit and active, y'all. The reality that when you walk into a gym at the top of this year, maybe, right, and you're embracing the suck, right? If you want to bench press 300 pounds, but you can't bench press 50 pounds, you do not say, I'm going to jump from 45 to 300, right? Like, that's not real. That's not realistic. There's an idea there, right? The 300 is this perfect ideal. But the reality is we cannot jump from A to B. We have to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and hit all those points. So emotionally, if you're over here and you can, let's say, only hold a 50-pound conversation, I want you to imagine that, right? Chris, like, what would be your 50-pound conversations versus your 300-pound conversations, right?
Hmm.
And there's so many points in between those two. But I wonder if we can, right, in the same way that we talk about the landscape, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that, right? But also at the gym, can you even conceptualize, can you even think of what a 50-pound conversation might look like emotionally? And how, if we're not used to a 300-pound conversation, how that might actually be really hard. And we might want to quit the relationship. We might not want to work. We might want to go back to our comfort zone when really it's, I might not be ready for 300, but can I try 60? Can I try a 100-pound conversation instead of 300? Do I need to step away and give myself a break before I come back to this moment, right? Emotionally speaking. Can you think of what a 50-pound versus like a 300-pound might even look like for you? Is that possible in this moment? I know I'm throwing this at you.
No, yeah, I mean, I think it is, and but so a couple things I do want to like hit on one thing you said, right, which is the word temporary. Okay, this
Yes.
is so critical, and nobody should miss that. Like,
Write
do
this
not
down, y'all.
miss, yeah, do not miss that the suck, the struggle is temporary, right? It does not last forever, and it will not kill you. And I mean that in the literal sense, right? Like your heart will continue to beat, your lungs will continue to breathe, right? It will not kill you. You will make it through it, but
This is the
you
difference between
gotta push
dangerous and
through.
scary. Okay, also, right? So write this down, y'all. Did we just hear the difference between dangerous and scary? Dangerous, life threatening, right? Even emotionally so. You can have that, right? Like life threatening, identity threatening, right? Scary, very different. We can make it through scary. So uncomfortable, right? But we will make it through. Okay, so temporary.
Exactly, temperate. Now, to get back to your question, right? I think the interesting thing is, you know, we've got to kind of, this is really hard, right? Like it's really easy when you can see physical strength, right? So when you go to the gym, and if anybody's ever done this, you go to the gym with a friend of yours who's just jacked, right? And you're trying to get in shape. Like it's really easy to see that they're physically stronger than you, right? And you might grab 5 pound and they grab a 50 pound weight. That's okay, right? And I think for some reason, it's really easy for us to accept that someone is physically stronger or weaker than us, right? And we don't try to push people in either direction, right?
Mhm.
I don't ask my friend who's, much stronger than me to come down to my weight, nor does he ask me to come up to his weight. We accept we're at different places and we kind of move forward through that exercise together.
Mhm.
This is actually, and this is what's interesting, this is really challenging when you transfer that to the emotional arena.
Mhm.
Because while you may be ready for a 50-pound emotional conversation, somebody else may not be. And the other super challenge here, where this gets even a little more tricky, and I don't want to make it more complex, but I'll let you simplify it for the
Bring
folks
it.
here, is what may be a 50-pound conversation for me may be a 500-pound conversation for someone
Ding,
else.
ding, ding.
So when I don't wash the dishes after my wife cooked, because maybe, I was tired and we got the kids to bed late that night,
Mm.
the next morning I'm she wants to talk about it. I'm thinking, oh, this is nothing, right? This is going to be, let's call it the 50-pound conversation.
Yeah.
But in her mind, this is the 500-pound conversation, because it set her whole day back, that I didn't do this one simple task at the end of the night.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's much more complex, I would say. And I think that's one thing we don't typically acknowledge is, you know, the difference between physical and emotional strength, something you can see versus something that is, for all intents and purposes, somewhat intangible, right? That you really got to focus in and dial more in on, right? And where are you strong? Where are others strong? And
Mm-hmm.
where are you both weak, right? In relationships, you talk about all of our life is relationships, whether you're single, whether you're married, doesn't
Yeah.
matter, right? You have relationships with people all around you. And you've
Absolutely.
got to understand, what are your emotional strengths? Where are areas you're strong and where do you need to work on those muscles a bit? Right.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes. I'm over here snapping for those of you who aren't on YouTube but are listening in on the podcast, right? Um, this is gold. I hope you all are writing this down and recognizing the reality. A 50-pound conversation for one of us may be a 500-pound conversation for someone else, and vice versa, of course. That has to be one of the number one challenges that I find in working with people, right? As a therapist, of course, is that they have reached the moment where in their relationships, in their life, they don't know how to reconcile that difference. And here's the thing is, I love that you said it's such a, you didn't use the language nuanced, right? But you're saying it's a nuanced thing, complex was the word you used. It's a complex thing, right? And to be able to acknowledge it means we have to have an awareness of it. And I think this is where we're running into a challenge in our generation in particular is now we have extensive privilege, right, of time. Our parents worked hard, right? And Chris and I are second gen American, for those who are unaware. Our parents did not, were not able to go to college, right? We did not come from a financially privileged background. We came from a lot of love, though. I will say that we had that in abundance. We have that in abundance, right? But I share this to say that we've come from this space where our parents have worked hard to give us time and energy and space to be able to explore, but they often have not been able to give us the emotional skills to level up because that was not a privilege. Now, the way that I see this is we're entering an era where we have the privilege of time to actually explore our emotional self, but not the skills to know how to do that. We're not being given an awareness of it. Suck it up, buttercup. We got to keep going, right? Which may have worked when we really didn't have the time to deal with our, like, we could just suck it up and move on to the next thing and it was going to be like that. But now we actually have time to sit and maybe we're on TikTok or maybe we're on Instagram or Facebook or, binging the next season of whatever. We actually have copious amounts of time. And that's where we get it because we don't have skills to really even be aware that we're having these emotional arena conversations, these 50-pound, 500 conversations every day. We're having an opportunity to have them, but it's hard to see. It's hard to see it like that.
No, it is. And I think I mean, it's kind of one of those things where it's so funny how you hit on the generational aspect of this, where, you are in my father, our father, right, used to say something, right? You are a product of your environment.
Mhm.
And for so many of us, it's crazy, right? I talk to so many, within our generation, at least, and beyond, where like it just wasn't a thing. To express any kind of emotion, right? That's shut down. You don't express emotion. You do what I say when I say, right? And then you grow up and right now you're trying to figure out why you struggle when someone does something that you don't like and you can't express yourself well. It's actually because you weren't really equipped well for that journey in life. And it's not to say it's to no fault of the generations before us, right? Like
Product of
they
the environment.
right again, we are exactly that, right? We're a product of our environment. So if that's what you grow up hearing and seeing and experiencing, then that will be what you carry into the next phase of your life, right?
For better or
Your
worse,
children
yeah.
and so on. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely one of those things, like you said it, right, where we've got to acknowledge that part of it, which is difficult, right? I mean, even if you can acknowledge it, how do you move past it?
Yeah, this is where I'm like over here, like I was own. How do you own it? How do you just own, right? That this is, oh, this is what happened. This is where this is. And here's the reality is I can't change the past, right? Like I can't do that. I don't have that magical power. But what I can do is say, this is where I'm at right now. Am I okay with it? And if I'm not, am I willing to change it? Because we can rewire, we can recondition, we can learn new skills. We do live in a society that has given us access to this, right? And accessibility may not be equitable everywhere, folks. And yet, if you are listening in, this is your opportunity. This is your invitation, right? One of the things that you mentioned was like, don't show emotion, don't show emotion. And I want to add a little bit more nuance to that of don't show emotions that are uncomfortable for me, is what we've been taught, right? Don't show emotions that are uncomfortable for me. You can be happy. I want you to be happy. Show me happy. Put a smile on it. But if you're going to be upset or sad or frustrated or disgusted, I don't want to see any of that. Put that away. Put it away. But are you going to be happy? Okay, we can be happy. So then what you end up having is a world that only ever wants to show that they're happy, even if they are dying inside.
Hmm.
Even if they feel helpless and hopeless, they've been trained on how to look on the outside, even though on the inside, there might be wavering and disappearing because of this lack of access to their emotions, this not owning the truth of what is actually here with them right now.
Mhm. Wow, that's super deep. And I mean, like, it's one of those things too, right? You mentioned something that I think is really, really, really important for people to also grasp, which is time,
Mm.
right? You have to own what you do with your time.
Mhm.
You own it 110%. Nobody else does. And, if you want to get physically stronger, then you need to, right, say, yeah, I'm going to watch a little less Netflix and I'm going to spend a little more time in the gym. It's no different in the emotional arena, right? If you want to get emotionally stronger, you have to spend time working on that, right? Working through that,
Absolutely.
reflect,
Absolutely.
right? Talking with folks like yourself on ways and strategies and tips and tricks and tools to actually move forward in that area, right? So just, for what it's worth, right? Be incredibly intentional about
Mhm.
what you do with your time, right? It is the
Mhm.
only resource you will not get back. The only one.
It is the only resource you can't get back, folks. Did you hear that? Okay. Chris, we are nearing the end of the episode, okay? And I typically say at this point, what are some of the gems that you're taking away, right? What are some of the points, since we've been talking about making it 1 through 5? You talked about land nav and needing to hit those points before you can move on, right? We've been talking about leaning into our edge. I'm wondering if we can give an example of the cliff of leaning into the edge. I'm wondering if we can do that. And then I also have an adventure challenge for people out there. Since we've been talking about the gym, One of the adventure challenges that I'm going to give is off of that idea of the emotional gym. And if you want to level up in your emotional arena, and if you want to become an athlete in your emotional arena, then you have to know how you are going to do this by choosing the relationship that is a challenge in your life. That's the weight that you're going to lean into. So I'm not going to go super duper into that right now, but because I want us to do this example first, but I am going to give you some adventure challenges, folks, around becoming an athlete in the emotional arena. So stay tuned. Chris, can we do an example of the cliff?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. So,
So is there, I wonder, right? Because we talked about it's like stay in your comfort zone, stay in your comfort zone. And maybe it's the dishes conversation, right? That you mentioned. Maybe it's the 2 a.m. in the morning waking up with the baby. Who's going to do that conversation? Maybe it's something with the head of sales or as a platoon leader or a land nav that you mentioned, or at the gym, right? With this 550-pound friend convo. Is there a particular challenge that we can work with and using the cliff as the metaphor so I can walk through this with people?
yeah, I mean, I think for me, maybe the one that's just most relatable, right? Like I want when I think about, hey, what could help most people, right? Most folks are not, I think, in challenges that are faced as a head of sales or platoon leader. But I would say for a lot of folks, and especially maybe I can just be specific, maybe there's a lot of fathers out there who are
Great.
definitely in um, challenging, emotionally challenging roles, right? As a father, it's one of those things, for better or for worse, society expects you to be strong all the time,
Mhm.
100% of the time, right?
And a
You don't
particular
get to
look of strong.
feel, yeah, you need to, yeah, exactly, which is fair in some regards, right? Like you need to be strong, but it doesn't mean you don't have emotions, right? It doesn't mean things don't get challenging. And so I think one area where it can be, one area that is maybe difficult, right, is when you're trying to kind of express some of the struggles that you experience, some of the challenges you experience, but inwardly, right, kind of calling into question. It's almost not even a question of whether your significant other, right, in this case, would be open to hearing. It's almost more of an inward battle, right, that you don't want to have the conversation because it would almost be admitting, right? Let's say you're at the gym here. It's almost like admitting I can't actually bench 500, right?
Yeah.
I know I'm showing like I can, showing up to the gym, slapping my arm, whatever, right? Like beating my chest, who knows, like,
Presenting it.
yeah, even though I'm broadcasting this image, I can't actually bench that, right? And
Mhm.
so I think just being, and this could be whatever it is for you, right? Talking more to the men, but it could be also for the women on this conversation, right? So,
All the people. Yeah, there's a
for
universality
anybody
in this. Keep
listening,
going. Hmm.
right? It's really just what is that thing, right? Where that area that you are broadcasting strength to the world,
Hmm.
that inwardly is not a strength for you. Inwardly, this is an area, and I won't call it a weakness, but I will call it an opportunity, right? You have
Yes.
an opportunity to grow in this area, and you are actually getting in your own way here. So I might step on some toes there, right? You are your own worst enemy in this regard. You've got to get out of your way
Get out of your own way.
so that you can actually begin to exercise in that area and get stronger. So again, I take it back for me. I think that the most challenging one to admit and acknowledge, right, is kind of in my role as a husband and as a father, right? But especially within the marriage, where are the areas where I thought it was enough
Hmm.
and I'm realizing it's actually not enough what I'm showing up with,
Mm, mm.
right?
Y'all, that's
And
a flag. Do we hear that? The two flags that the two flags that Chris just brought up of how do I know it might be time for me to do some extra work? How do I know that it might be time for me to level up in my emotional arena? When you feel, weakness, like, oh, this is weakness, or, oh, somebody's questioning whether it's enough, this is an opportunity for you to look inward and get out of your own way.
yeah, definitely it is, right? Because I think as much as we hate to admit it, when people see things, right, there's usually some element of truth. Granted, some people live in complete fabricated realities of their own. But that's not usually the case, and especially in the
Mhm.
relationships in our lives are usually there for a reason.
Mm.
And so we've got to really be thoughtful about that and really take that in, evaluate those things, right? When somebody says, "Why are you upset about that?" Right? Why are you? Why don't you take this more seriously? Right?
Mhm.
It could be either end of the spectrum, but really
Mhm.
looking at again, where is this emotional opportunity where clearly it's causing friction, right? It's causing challenges and problems, and if you could focus in that area and develop and grow stronger in that area, then you might be able to actually get to the cliff edge that we're talking about here, right? And see that on the other side, oh, wow, it's not that scary. It's actually beautiful, right? That's actually going to help me get to the next mountaintop that I want to get to, right? But I've got to get there first, and I won't ever get there until again I can acknowledge these things. That's the key thing is got to acknowledge that it's there in the first place.
Yes, yes. Anytime someone brings discomfort to your table, to your feet, to you, there is an opportunity to say, I can grow here. This is an opportunity for me to grow. Anytime discomfort comes to you, it might be growing in relationship with that individual, or it might be growing in relationship with yourself and realizing you need to step away from that. And we're not, this episode is definitely not going to lean into that as much, right? We're talking about being a father, being a partner here, right? A marital partner, in which case we want to stay, we want to grow and level up in these spaces. And so, with this said, imagine folks, Chris is talking here about this cliff edge. And right, your wife comes to you, my beautiful sister in law. She comes to you, right, with all her strength and confidence and power. She's awesome, y'all. And she's a very confident woman, right? She's not going to fold. She's not going to bend here. She is going to tell you what she needs, what she wants in this moment, as she humanly can. And Chris has an opportunity here to go back to his comfort zone and shut her down and say, what are you talking about? I can't deal with this. This isn't worth my time. He could do that and go back to his comfort zone and not deal with this. But of course, Chris, you want to level up and show up for your partner and become a better husband and a better father and lean into your edge. But as you do that, your discomfort grows. Is there anything that you notice that happens in your body when you feel discomfort? Like, does your chest tighten? You get hot in your face? Do you notice things happen? And these are also flags, y'all. This is why we're going through this. As you walk toward the edge of that cliff, what do you notice happens in your body as she's trying to
Yeah.
talk to you?
No, I mean, I think it's one of those things, right? Like, and again, I don't want to speak for all men here, right? But I think we tend to do similar things, maybe, where like we'll start to get a little short, right? And this is a sign, telltale sign that patience is decreasing and frustration is increasing.
Flag it, y'all. Mm-hmm.
And as soon as you start to notice you're getting a little shorter, you're getting a little snappier, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Even physically, right? You're probably not smiling when you're having these conversations, right? So you might notice that the typical happy conversation that you're having is suddenly starting to get a little bit more serious, right? In your
Do we hear
responses and your interactions, right?
emotional
Starting to
weight?
get more exactly right. You're starting to let it show. And
Mm-hmm.
this is again just how it manifests in myself, right? I would imagine in others it's
Absolutely.
can't be terribly different because again, it's just human anatomy, right? As we start to experience these emotions. But again, like you said, the key thing is it's recognizing this as happening. And it's at that moment kind of being able to pause and say, hold on, I'm getting to a point where I don't want to be, right? Because then it's going to kind of be that eruption, if you will, right?
Okay. I don't know how
What's
to handle the
causing
weight
this?
of this. Yeah.
Yeah, what are the triggers, right? But again, recognizing, like you said, physically first. Okay, why am I so short, right? Why, I mean, everything, right? The anatomy is so funny, right? When you start to look at these little elements and how, the micro expressions and things like that, right? When I'm squinting more, right? When I'm squinting more, right? It's because I'm probably saying, like, I'm almost trying to investigate you,
I'm
right?
assessing the
Like
situation.
I'm really focused. Like I'm almost honing in to try and find inconsistencies so that I can jump on those, right?
Yeah.
You have to recognize that. You've got to take a step back, open your
Mhm.
eyes, right? You're not interrogating in most relationships, right? We're not interrogating a criminal on the other side,
I'm
right?
not right.
Try and find something that they're guilty for, which tends to be the case.
These are flags. Everybody, do you hear this? Everybody, these are the thoughts that have. If you all of a sudden start right, your partner's right. Your what's the word that I'm looking for? Oh my gosh. There's a very particular word. I'm so angry with my brain for forgetting this right now. It's like where you are. I'm going to use your exact examples. You're all of a sudden find your brain alienating your partner, rejecting the idea of them. They've been cast. They're being criminalized now. They're right now. There's somebody who's being right. If you find yourself all of a sudden rewriting your partner or these people you care about, that is a flag that your body is trying to remove the discomfort so you don't have to feel it anymore without actually growing in relationship with them. You may need to take a minute and step away if the emotional weight becomes too much in this moment. I wonder too if this is the moment to step right up to the edge of them instead of actually going over, right? If you feel that you're going to break, if you feel you're going to shut them down and just cut them out in this moment, what did you say? Explode, right? On them, explosive moment. In lieu of that happening, if you can just own what's happening in the moment, I am triggered. I can't handle the emotional weight of this conversation right now. It's like holding their hands in the moment and so honoring the relationship at the very edge of the cliff that you say, I love you enough to say, I have to step away right now, but I want to come back to this. I have just recognized that I do not know how to carry the emotional weight of this conversation at this particular moment. And I want to be able to show up for you, but I can't right now. Let me do my best by stepping away and taking a minute.
Which is so hard, right? For again, right, for everybody. But again, I talk to, as a man, right? I talk specifically for men, right? It's almost a show of weakness, which
It's
again, societally
perceived as a
we
show of
reject,
weakness,
right?
right?
Yeah, you need to step away because you're weak. You need to step away because you can't handle this conversation right now.
Woo!
When in reality, the strongest thing you could do is step away from that situation.
Thank
It's the
you.
complete opposite.
Okay. Did we hear that, folks? Did we hear this? Father, husband, head of sales, platoon leader telling you it is perceived weakness for you to stay and handle that conversation when you are actually going to harm yourself or others in that moment. It is strength to be able to recognize the long-term benefit actually lies in being able to walk away so that you can return. That is emotional strength. That is emotional flexibility, the ability to maneuver and not just engage in what we're actually talking about is the difference between a powered and an empowered individual. Powered individuals are going to stay and try to tough it out and handle the situation. An empowered individual is going to recognize, I don't have the best tools right now. So what I'm going to do is go back, regroup. I'm going to come back, right? I'm going to leave. I'm going to go regroup and I'm going to come back and I'm going to do this. That's the way to empower yourself and others. Okay.
Mic drop.
Mic drop, y'all.
Quick break for a sec. If Empowered Human is offering you something valuable about courage, healing, belonging, or love at your core, you may want to work with me. In particular, if you know of or identify as a high-achieving man, and I say this quite seriously because if you don't, I'm going to drive you up a friggin' wall. High achiever that has leveled up in every arena except your relationship with yourself or your relationships with others. Visit empoweredhuman.love for more on how you can level up in your relationships with one of our Empowered Human intensives. Intensives understand the value of your time. Of the 3 that I offer, Walk into Courage covers a month's worth of weekly sessions in just 2 hours. Dive into Courage is a 3-day intensive that can cover up to 6 months worth of sessions. And Ascend into Courage is a year-long program to give you the skills and the network you need to level up for lifelong emotional security. When it comes to leveling up in your relationships, I got you. Head to empoweredhuman.love for more. But for now, back to the episode.
Chris, before we open up any more cans of worms, I'm gonna ask us to just leave the audience with that last things on this cliff, right? Let's say we don't. Let's say we go away, we regroup, we come back to the cliff edge, okay? We realize that even though we didn't know what was going to happen, that it's not oblivion that we're going to fall off, right? If we keep leaning into our edge and go through this. The only way out is through. The only way out of that discomfort is through. You can't keep it at arm's length because it just stays there at arm's length. So we move through with our partner, with ourselves, over that cliff edge, through the fears, recognize that dangerous is different than scary. We can do scary. And we find ourselves in a more grounded place on the other side. Have you found this to be true in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I think about there's another thing we like to say, right? Militarily, right? You make a decision, make a decision.
Mhm.
A bad decision
Action.
is better than no decision,
Mm.
right? And eventually,
Why is
when
that? Can I ask that actually? Why is that you would say,
yeah,
even in the military, that a bad decision is better than no decision?
indecision, I mean, it's kind of simple, right? So I'm going to give it at the most like blunt level. Indecision
Absolutely.
leads to death, right?
Yes.
Indecision leads to people getting hurt.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, most things that we decide to do can actually be undone for some reason. And this is not just, this is in all aspects of life. I think that,
Mhm.
especially in the professional world, I see this all the time
Mm.
where people are so afraid, fellow leaders, right? And I'm going to leaders in an organization. I take that word really seriously. But people who are in positions of power are afraid to make decisions.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, what you've got to acknowledge is you never have all of the information you would want to have,
Mm.
right? You will never be able to see, from A to Z exactly what's happening, but you still have to make a decision. You
Mhm.
have to
Mhm.
take, the key thing is you have to take a step forward.
The next best step is all you can do.
Exactly. And so I think that's really kind of the crux of it right there, right? Which is, hey, don't have this sort of analysis paralysis, or even forget about analysis paralysis. There's either I'm stuck and I can't move forward because I'm looking at all this data and I'm just stuck,
Yep.
or there's I don't want to handle this, so I'll just ignore it and
Mm.
be and hope, right? Here's I love the word hope, but we're going to use it in the wrong context now. I'm going to hope that the situation resolves itself. Newsflash, in most cases, it doesn't, right? And you still have to deal with it, only now it's probably worse, right? So
You
think
didn't take
about
any
it. If
control.
you, right? It's like mold, okay?
Mm.
Ooh, I don't want to look at that. So I'm just going to close the door, right? And not look up at the vent that has mold on it
Yeah.
and hope that in a week it'll be gone. Well, I hate to break it to you, but it won't. And in fact, it's going to have spread, right? So the problem that you could have fixed in 15 minutes now is going to take you 15 hours to fix, right? So you need to really lean into that, right?
Yeah.
Understanding that the alternative is actually so much worse in this case, right? If you decide that is to do nothing. But when you
Yes.
decide to do something, that's when you will experience that growth. That's when you will be, like you said, leveling up, right?
Yes.
It's only when you choose to take a step forward. It will not happen when you take steps backwards. And it will not happen when you stay in the same place. I hate to break it to folks. There's no growth in the comfort zone. There just isn't.
It's not designed to be that way, right? The comfort zone is designed to keep you the same. That's what's comfortable. There is so much more that I could say on this, Chris. Thank you so much for your time and your energy today as we lean into our edge and level up in our emotional arenas. Oh, there's so much more I want to say, but but I know we've got to come to a close. And at this point, before I offer adventure challenges to our audience, I want to know what in particular, if anything, is really sitting with you from this episode. Just one thing that you really just want to highlight for our audience, our humans out there that might be sitting with you in this moment. And I'll do the same.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just right. Look, we're just starting a new year.
Yeah.
So one thing that sits with me is it's not too late, right? It's not too late. It's never too late is the reality, but it's
Mhm.
really not too late right now. So if anybody is listening, right? If anybody's feeling man, no, I think I really screwed this up too bad, right? I think it's beyond repair. Let's say, for example,
Mhm.
it's not too late. It's absolutely not too late. And you, again, let's go back to what we just said. You've just got to make a choice to take a step forward today,
Mhm.
right? There's a nice quote I like, right? Uh, think big, start small, start now. Take
Think
that,
big.
right? Let that be your maybe one of your mottos for 2025, right? Think big. There's big things you want to accomplish financially, emotionally, physically, right? All these things mentally. Think big, start small so that you actually get started, right? Because we're not going to start with, the 500-pound set, like you said, because that's going to
Don't do
crush us,
it. Yep.
right?
Yep.
Let's go get the 10-pound weights and let's start small, but let's start right now. So I
Right.
promise you, what you will see with the consistency is if you hit
Mhm.
those 10 pounds every day, that'll turn to
Mhm.
20, we'll turn to 30,
Mhm.
turn to 40, turn to 50.
Mhm. That's
Before
why
you
you have
know
to
it,
start now.
exactly. That's why but you've got to start now. We're in January. Don't make a decision to start in June. Okay. You're going to be disappointed. And really don't make a decision to start in December. You're going to really be disappointed with the results
Oh my
you get
gosh.
this year. You'll still get results, but you're just delaying your results. Don't delay your results. Don't do that to yourself. Right. Go get your results today. And that's another great quote here for you, right? You can have results or excuses, not both.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Start today. We getting that, folks? Write that down in your journal, okay? For me, I think what's really resonating is actually related to what you're sharing is sitting with you. I think the number one thing that I hear from my clients after they've worked with me is, I wish I'd done it sooner.
Mhm.
And I want to be clear, folks, it's not, I wish I worked with you, Nina, sooner. It's, I wish I had showed up for myself and owned my truth sooner, that I needed help, that I needed resources, that I needed to step out of my comfort zone so that I could grow. I wish that I had seen that I could and needed to grow sooner.
Mhm.
But there is this illusion that if I just hoped that it would change, I just wished that it would change. And I'm not saying don't hope, don't wish, don't pray. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is take action that aligns with your hopes and your wishes and your prayers. Be aligned in that way, little by little, 10-pound increments, 1%. If you're my people who are financially driven, it's your 1% change, right? It's that 1% investment in you that you know is going to end up with a return on the back end. And what happens? You get that compound interest going. This is how it works. You can't start in June. What you know needs to start right now in January. And it's not going to be perfect. We challenge perfectionism, y'all. It's not going to be perfect. It could be messy. It could feel, in fact, as you step forward, that you might realize, oh my gosh, this actually put me 2 steps back. You cannot go back if you keep moving forward. You're not actually moving back. Think of it more like a roller coaster, and what you did was a loop. Felt like you were moving back, but actually it just moved you forward. That's what's happening. So long as you keep learning and growing and moving forward, that's what's happening. You picking up what I'm putting down?
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that roller coaster. I'm going to use that, by the way. That's phenomenal, right? Because everybody knows, right? You go into this, whoa, what's happening? And then what happens on the downside? Momentum brings you even faster out. So you have to
Exactly.
sort of take a couple steps back so that you could accelerate into the
Boom.
next season of life.
Absolutely. 100%. I could do an entire episode on just the roller coaster as a metaphor. We won't do that now. We'll save that for someone else another time. But 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 this is that point in the episode where, before I even do adventure challenges, I keep just putting it off, right? Last thing, I promise. Chris, is there anything else that you want to share about, anything that you just want to share about you, or have the audience reach out to you, or anything like that, before I move into adventure challenges? Anything they should know?
Look, I mean, like just that, if I've got a kind of open door policy, right? Like I'm always happy to help anyone. And the reason also, right, is like I owe it to everyone, which might sound weird, right? If you've never met me, you're like, what? What do you mean you owe it to me? Like I've never done anything for you. Yeah, but many years ago, I started my own entrepreneurial journey where I, very strongly believed in this metaphor you're talking about of the cliff, right? Kind of
Yeah.
here's what we are, here's what we want to be, and here's this leap of faith in between. Well, I took that leap of faith, but I didn't take it alone. I had a lot of people who were there who I called mentors, right, for advice, people who'd been there, who had done it, and helped me to get my business started way back in, in that time. And so I feel so grateful for those people, right? And in many cases, there's really nothing I can do to pay them back because I think, they have what they need and what they want in life, right? They got something out of it. And now the best I can do is pay it forward to the next group of, entrepreneurs or fathers or, insert title here, right?
Yeah.
Individual relationships. So of course, right. Always happy to talk with folks on this topic. So yeah, I think hopefully you can provide my contact info, right? Find me on LinkedIn. You can find me anyhow, on Instagram. And yeah, feel free to reach out.
Yeah. What's your Instagram handle? We'll throw that one out so people can just hear it.
Yeah, it's at the Catalyst Chris.
Okay,
So
at the Catalyst Chris. Of course, that will be in our show notes, folks. I think what you just shared is very empowered human. When you think about, the reality that a powered human often thinks exists in a vacuum, like do it my way or the highway. And an empowered human really recognizes we don't exist in a vacuum, right?
no,
The greatest strength you can have is interdependence, especially in the beautifully diverse world that we live in. Diversify your human portfolio, folks.
yeah,
Diversify your emotional self.
I love to say one thing. Like I don't always step on toes, but sometimes I will, right? And there's one thing I love to say because I think
100%.
society just paints this wonderfully false image of self-made. I'm self-made. I came from nothing. I did it by myself, right? Man, if you didn't pave the roads and build the engine in the
Thank you.
vehicle, right? If you didn't create
Yes.
the Starbucks cup and the beans that came, right? If you didn't farm those, you are not self-made. Nobody is self-made. That's such a lie, right? It's just such a lie that we perpetuate in our society. And yeah, I just, it's one of those things like, don't believe in that lie. None of us is self-made. We need each other. Like,
We need
it's
each other.
literally the reason that, we survived as a species for so long is
Yeah.
because we were able to, right, group together. And so let's not lose sight of that, right? Let's come back to that.
Yeah. Oh, Chris, thank you so much. Are we ready for these adventure challenges now?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
It's time. Let's do it.
Okay, here's the thing, y'all. We end with adventure challenges because we are growth oriented. And this is me giving you an invitation, a very specific one, between this episode and the next episode to level up in your emotional arena. You don't have to take this adventure challenge. You might look back at this episode and say, wow, I'm really vibing on the idea that, discomfort is temporary, that if I want to grow into my edge, I need to lean out of my comfort zone, that in fact, dangerous is different than scary. Wow, that I'm actually surrounded by relationships that can help me grow, that I can level up emotionally in anything, that actually a 50-pound conversation is different than a 500-pound conversation. And what might be a 500-pound conversation to me might be a 1,000-pound conversation to somebody else, right? You might be taking any and all of these things with you as your adventure challenge into this next week. But I like to give you 3 very specific ones. We do it in 3 levels, okay? The first level is self-awareness. The second is self-knowledge. And the third is self-realization. Do we see how we incrementally are growing there? If you are my level 1ers and working on self-awareness, what I want you to consider between this week and next week as your adventure challenge is there something that is off and uncomfortable in your life? What is it? I just want you to write down, think about this relationally, something that is off or uncomfortable, either in your relationship with yourself or someone else. That's literally all you have to do is be aware. I was really uncomfortable when we talked about the dishes the other day. I was really uncomfortable thinking about getting myself to the gym the other day, so I didn't. I was really uncomfortable talking about getting a promotion at work, so I walked away. Whatever that discomfort was, all I need you to do is be aware that you were uncomfortable. Because everybody else who's not ready for a level 1 challenge and they're still at a 0, not that there's not value there, but that they're still at a 0, they're not ready to grow, they can't even be aware of the challenge. All they are in is denial and avoidance. But not my level 1ers. You're now saying, no, you know what? I have the courage to at least be aware. That's one of my challenges right now. And I've been avoiding it and I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to be aware of it. So you're my level oneers, okay? If that's you, congrats, my hat is off to you. If you're like, Nina, I got this. I already know where my challenges are. What's the next thing? Self-knowledge. Now you have to know, what can I do about that? That's your next level up. You're aware of the challenge. Now we got to know, well, what can I do about this? Well, now that you know what your discomfort is, I want you to start to write down what the things are that are possible for you to change. Your 1% changes, your 10-pound lifts. What's something that you could just do differently? And here's the thing is, I want you to get a list of, even if it sounds crazy, even if it sounds off the wall, I just want you to start writing down, well, I could do this. Well, I could do that. Well, I could totally leave. Well, I could totally go. Well, I could do whatever your answers are. Let yourself get a list, put a little timer on 5-10 minutes, just get a list of anything different than what you are doing. And I'm going to actually call back what Chris said earlier. Indecision is what you don't want, right? The only bad decision is indecision. Can you repeat this back, Chris? Because I want to get it right.
Yeah, the only bad decision is no decision, right? Uh, make a decision. Take those 3 words and repeat them, because I know it's funny, right? Like, just not to interrupt, but just to give the reality, like, we heard those words in officer candidate school. I cannot count how many times a day.
Make a decision.
And so it burned into my brain, but I want to burn it into your brain now, right? Like, everybody who's listening, burn it into your brain, make a decision.
Okay.
Make a decision.
Make a decision. So what I'm asking you for my level 2ers for the knowledge piece, right, is you actually aren't even yet to acting on that, but I want you to know what you could do. I want you to know this. That's self-knowledge. Make your list, all the possible decisions that you could make. No judgment, just go for it, even if it sounds crazy and off the wall. You still with me? Okay. Now we move on. You say, Nina, I got this. I know what my options are, but I want to take action. I want to do this. I want to do it now. Now you're in self-realization. Self-realization is about taking action to realize the world that you want to live in, the life that you want to live. So now you're going to look at that list and you're going to say, I want to do this, or I want to do that. You're going to take action and realize that this upcoming week. If you're my level 3ers, you're in self-realization. My hat is off to you. No matter where you are at, whether you are becoming more aware, gaining knowledge, or realizing, I want you to know you are taking action. You are taking action. That's your 1% move forward, and it's just where you're at. This makes sense, Chris? Those adventure challenges, does that sound about right? Do you want to add anything?
No, that's it. I think you hit it so spot on. Like, it really is just, like you said, taking action and one step at a time. Do not fall victim to the ways of this world. Start comparing yourself to the person who's been going to the gym for 5 years. Okay. If you've been going for 5 days and they've been going for 5 years, they're in a very different place, right? Don't compare yourself to that person.
Yeah.
Okay? Just focus on one day at a time. Okay. And what is the decision that you're going to take, and the action as a result that you're going to take today and tomorrow and the next day, right? And focus one day at a time. Don't make a decision for 14 days from now, but just get started, right? So think big for this year for yourself, and start small and start right now, like in this moment.
Yes. Okay, this is just literally heaven sent, universe sent, however you want to say this. Y'all, we're recording this on MLK Day, and one of the quotes, so offer me some grace on this, y'all. I'm not doing research right now on this. I'm not going to run off and go, fact check this. If I am not mistaken, one of MLK's quotes was, how do you climb a 30-step staircase, right? And I'm paraphrasing this, right? One step at a time. One step at a time. Okay, how do you achieve massive change in your life? You don't go from A to B. It's a 1 through 5 step-by-step process. What's your 1% thing between this week and next week? That's what Chris and I are inviting you to do. Chris, thank you so much for your time and your energy and your sharing. Incredible honor to be here with you, bro. Love you.
No, hey, thank you so much. And yeah, I mean, it's amazing, right? Like, I love this idea, and I want everybody to have such a powerful year. I think there's so much potential in this year. I mean, we're so early on.
Yes.
So much is already happening in so many ways. There's a lot of change, and that can be exciting for some people. That can be scary for other people. That's okay, right? We all have to keep moving forward, right? None of us will cease to exist. We must take the next step. So just, really lean in, like you said, lean into this, lean into your edge, right? Find your edge and lean into it, right? And I wish everybody who's listening the most powerful 2025, the most powerful year they've ever had.
2025 is your year, folks. Go out and get it. Thank you so much for listening to Empowered Human with Nina Garcia and our very special guest, Chris Garcia. Thank you, folks, for being out there, for keeping the dialogue going, for transforming your life from powered to empowered. Thank you so much. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye for now.